So twice the county told you there was no criminal investigation into Rob Sheehan. So why, at March 2nd, and you were quoted later, Tony, by saying the sentence mentioned Rob Sheehan in criminal investigation. And if you remember, at the council meeting, Rob Sheehan said, I instigated this investigation. It's very clear to me, I don't know if it's clear to everyone else in the room, crystal clear what's happened. There was twice the county said there was no criminal investigation. And then suddenly they turn around and say there is an investigation into parties possibly supplying perjured testimony. Now, neither Lear nor Sheehan gave any testimony. So clearly, they're not involved with that. I have on good authority that the county wrote that letter because Rob Sheehan responded to the county what he had seen in Fallon's report. And that is why the county sent that letter on March 2nd, because neither Lear nor Sheehan provided any testimony. So the county is looking at people willfully perjuring. It can't have been those two. So those two things are not linked. There's a separate investigation. That seems very clear to me, based on the letter that Rob Sheehan wrote to the county in response to Major Fallon's report.
Jack, before you make comments like that, you should have the facts accurate.
I do, Tony.
Let me respond. The Cape May County Prosecutor's Office conducted a criminal investigation with respect to Lieutenant Lear's use of comp time.
How can you say it was a criminal investigation? They twice responded to you and said it was administrative and that you should handle it. How can you?
Before reaching the conclusion that it was administrative, they looked at it from a criminal standpoint to determine whether there was any criminal wrongdoing. The only witnesses to our knowledge that they spoke to and interviewed were Chief Sheehan and retired Chief Sorrentino. Mm-hmm. And that was the only criminal investigation that had occurred as of that point.
Right. And twice they then told you there was no, having looked into it, they were satisfied that there was no criminal conduct, and they twice turned it back to you. I now want to ask, you then gave that investigation to Major Fallon to look into the internal administration of Kenya Police Department. Bruce, I want to ask you, for the whole year of 2013, after Lieutenant Lear signed his contract in January, prohibiting him from claiming comp time for that whole year while Chief Sorrentino was in charge, were you aware of timesheets from Lear showing compensatory time has been taken in violation of his contract?
The process in the city of Cape May, which has been in place for many, many years, has the employees complete and fill out their own timesheets in handwritten form. And on that document, it notates on there, for the benefit of the employees, it is their responsibility to accurately record their time for the purpose of the time that they work, leave that they may have taken off, and to certify on there that it is in fact accurate. The next level of process is then to have the department head review the timesheets and sign off and submit those to payroll for processing. So in answer to your question, I don't see every single timesheet for every single pay period throughout the course of the year. I review the ones for my staff in my department directly, whether that's in the tax office or in the manager's office, and do the same and sign them and send them to payroll for processing.
So for the whole year, when the payroll clerk, Stacey Halbrunner, was seeing Chuck Lear's timesheets, obviously she would be aware he was clearly writing compensatory time on there. Did she not ever go to you in the course of that year?
Here's one of the things, and again, I was just going to say, we're getting into the details of the investigation. Right, but we're not able to discuss.
Why? The administrative investigation by Major Fallon,
right,
which is now complete. Why can't you go into that?
Because there's still an ongoing matter with the prosecutor's office.
No, it's not. Major Fallon's.
Yes.
No, it's not.
I can answer that. The report has been completed.
I actually would just like to know if Bruce was aware in 2003 that Lieutenant Lear was using compensatory time? It's a yes or a no answer. Were you aware that Lieutenant Lear in 2013 was continuing to take compensatory time? Were you aware of that?
The investigation pertaining to Lieutenant Lear has been completed. Nothing has been done yet administratively. He's entitled to a hearing if charges are brought, and he's entitled to have that hearing, a departmental hearing, in private. So it is not incumbent on us at this time to give out the details of the administrative investigation report until that matter has been concluded.
Tony, I'm just asking a question about administration of City Hall. Was Bruce aware in 2013 that Lieutenant Lear was taking compensatory time? I'm not asking anything about the investigation. I could ask Bruce, was he aware that which car Lieutenant Lear drove to work? So were you aware that he was taking compensatory time during that whole year?
Based on my recollection, I'm not aware that Mr. Lear was taking significant amounts of comp time.
Significant or any?
Well, the other part is that you would need to recognize is that the city has a system of flex time that allows employees that have worked some extra hours in a 2-week time period to take off an equivalent amount of time in either that same pay period or the next pay period. So if an employee worked on a Saturday and it happened to be the last Saturday of the pay period, and that was beyond their 40-hour work week, it was possible for them to take an equivalent number of hours off in a subsequent pay period. So you'd have to study the circumstances and evaluate each pay period on its own and as to whether it was flex time, comp time. So I think I've responded to your question.
It said Lieutenant Lear comp time. He either took it or he didn't. So I'm wondering why you paid James Fallon to find out what you already knew, that Lieutenant Lear was taking comp time. I mean, surely couldn't you just go down to the office and look at his timesheets and save yourself an investigation?
Jack, with all respect to your questions, this media advisory is mainly to explain the city council's actions with respect to Robert Sheehan. And that was the focus of this meeting, to get information out that we believe is not confidential and not protected by any privacy concerns. The questioning you're asking, the line of questioning pertains to the administrative investigation pertaining to Lieutenant Lear, and that was not the purpose of this advisory.
I understand. Let me ask one final question then. Do you not think that it was, given that Lieutenant Lear and Sheehan never responded to the inquiry, don't you think it was insufficient for that report to be concluded without Chief Sorrentino, who was in charge for most of the time that this compensatory time was allegedly taken? She wasn't part of the investigation?
She was contacted and she refused to cooperate.
Okay, I have to tell you something that I know for a fact. There's a Diane Sorrentino who lives in South Jersey who was contacted by Major Fallon. She's not the former chief of police. She's a former chief of police cousin's wife, and she was called. Major Fallon called the wrong Diane Sorrentino. You could easily have found her number from you guys. I think it was on the report, but he called the wrong Diane Sorrentino. He called the chief of police's cousin's wife, and she did refuse to cooperate.
That's part of his report in terms of his attempts, which we're not disclosing at this point. But if you have information pertaining to possibly the wrong Diane Sorrentino being contacted, you can share it with the city manager, and he'll look into that. That's the first that we're really hearing.
Question for the mayor. If you could talk about not renewing or this resolution to rescind Chief Sheehan's position. If it was an open investigation, could you have tabled or somehow perpetuated his current position until that was resolved rather than a demotion?
That's an excellent question for information, Clyde. The contract with Rob Sheehan started March 4th of 2014. The one-year probationary period would have ended on March the 3rd, 2015. So the city council asked that question, if it was an opportunity to defer that decision, and we were informed that we could not, that if we did not act on March the 3rd, that in fact the appointment would become permanent. Okay, so we didn't have that option.